Eat nutrient-dense whole foods. Don't eat poison. Get sunshine on your skin. Sleep well. It's so simple, man. It's so simple. I had a 15-year music career. In the last 10 years was 300 shows a year. At 25 years old, I got a reality TV show. I was on ABC. I had these music videos out. My YouTube was cranking. And I just felt like there's something more than this.
I really resonate with the idea of just feeling for the first time like I actually have so much more control of the outcomes that are happening in my life. Things that are happening to me are a direct result of my beliefs and then the things that I'm actually doing in the world.
Most people don't come to me till they're over the age of 35. That you can feel better after 35 years of poison in 30 days? This is like a gift from the universe, man. And it's a cheat code. It's literally a cheat code. It's like a 30-day reset. Can be transformative for your whole life.
Where do you think most people slip up in approaching that framework? Or where have you seen most people slip up?
100%.
It doesn't seem like it was too long ago that we were sitting in the sauna catching up here at Squatch Frontier Fitness, which is where we're recording. And it was so clear to me that we were going to have a great podcast after we had that conversation. I was joking with you before, but I wish the cameras were rolling when we were in the sauna, because I feel like there was so much juice in there that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I loved about our conversation was just, and I was telling you this before, just your story arc. There's so many different things to pull on. You know, a musician, you had this background in music where you were super successful. Then you got into the health and wellness space, became an e-com entrepreneur, and then are also just a food activist, like very similar to like what Brett and I kind of identify with, which is, you know, our origin story of just talking about what's gone wrong in the food system. So super pumped to have you on.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be an amazing episode.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate you having me here, man. And that first conversation, because I remember I first came across you. I'd heard about Meat Mafia a ton. I didn't know a whole lot about it. And then I went to the Daylight computer opening, right here, Let's across the way. Yeah. And I was like, man, I got to chat with these guys. And then we set up the sauna session, and here we are.
What was your first impression hearing Meat Mafia?
Alignment.
All right, let's go.
It's the first word that pops in my head.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because like you said with me, that you guys are very multifaceted. You know, I actually thought about you this morning because I was like, Bitcoin broke 100,000. How's he doing? You know, I was like, he's got to be killing the game. But yeah, just that. Like I think fundamentally when people ask me, not the question of like, what do you do? But like, what are you trying to do? Right. And for me, I'm trying to help people set themselves free. It's always about freedom, right? It's like, how can you escape toxic diet culture? How can you escape a toxic food system? How can you escape toxic jobs, right? If you're going someplace for 40 hours a week that sucks your soul, it's going to be very difficult to find optimal health and wellness. If you're going home to a toxic relationship, it's going to be very difficult to find optimal health and wellness. So it's like just taking your life in your own hands, like what I call, Jocko's term for extreme ownership, right? Just taking extreme ownership of your own life, which, and I know a little bit about your story, you told me a bit, is kind of what you did, right? I was a musician. You had a steady gig, good paycheck, things are looking fine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's almost like something's eating at you. You feel like you have to make changes. So I feel like every facet that you guys talk about, I'm like fully in alignment with.
Yeah. I think what our show has really evolved into is just trying to think from first principles and just ask that question, why, as many times as we can, and invite people on who have that same ethos, because it's amazing just like seeing what free thinking, like people who are ultimately trying to find that form of freedom for themselves, you know, it comes in all the areas of our lives, our relationships, our jobs, like literally just how we're spending our time, and just asking that why question. It's powerful. And I think that, you know, we live in a world where there's just a lot of fear that traps people, or bad information that traps people. And that leads to like that stagnation. So it's cool I think just coming across people who resonate with that. And I mean, you've been talking about this stuff, particularly in the health and wellness space, for almost 10 years now.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
Dude. Yeah. So bring me back to the early days of paleo. Where are you at PaleoFX 2016? 2016,
yeah.
See Rob Wolf.
Yeah.
Bring me back to that conference. Like, what was that like?
Dude, it was scary because, you know, I was in the music industry. At the time I was doing, you know, the last 10 years, I had a 15-year music career. The last 10 years was 300 shows a year. At 25 years old, I got a reality TV show. I was on ABC. And then, you know, we were talking about video production earlier today. I had these music videos out. My YouTube was cranking. I just released a music video with the Nashville Ballet in it. It was choreographed by the actual Nashville Ballet, this huge production shoot and everything. And I just felt like there's something more than this, And at that time, my niece was born terminally disabled. She was having over 300 seizures a day. And I know that sounds like we're taking a sidetrack here, but it's how the paleo thing happened, because around that time, I've always been obsessed with fitness since I played hockey for 10 years when I was a kid, started lifting weights at 15. I got into jiu-jitsu. I was a boxer. I did Olympic lifting, CrossFit twice a day, all these crazy things. And my body just never looked the way that I wanted it to. I felt like I was like really busting my ass and still kind of chubby, and appearance matters in the music industry. So I was always kind of obsessed and had disordered eatings and all these things. Once I found paleo, it was a documentary called The Perfect Human Diet by C.J. Hunt, which is still epic. Go watch it for sure.
I haven't even heard of it.
Amazing. It's just like human nutrition through an anthropology lens. Makes sense, right? It's like
it sounds like that's what we should be thinking about.
Exactly. The way I say it to new clients coming into the programs, I'm just like, listen, you could hike through the forest every day for the next 100 years. You're never going to stumble upon a bagel tree. Not going to happen.
Where's that bagel tree? They might be making that in the lab somewhere right now, but
exactly. So that was like this kind of aha moment. And then I did my first paleo reset, and I dropped like 10% body fat. It was I was like, what? This is like, I don't have to work so hard in the gym. This is crazy,
Yeah.
And so I started getting really deep into nutrition and studying it just as like a hobby. I actually became a certified nutritional therapist as a hobby so that my workouts could be more effective. And I learned about paleo and all this stuff. And right around that time was when my niece was born. And she was moved to the pediatric ICU. They put a feeding tube in her stomach. It's called a G tube. She was given less than 3 years to live. It's like, she's terminally disabled. This baby's going to die, basically. So I was at, Vanderbilt Neurology, Centennial Hospital in Nashville, and this was my first introduction to the ketogenic diet. They give these babies a keto diet to stop seizures. Wow. And so they put Savannah on a ketogenic diet, but it's mainstream medicine. So quality is not taken into consideration here. So Gerber makes a baby formula, ketogenic baby formula called KetoCal. And I checked the ingredients. It's high fat, low carb, but all the fats are vegetable oils, artificial flavors and sweeteners, synthetic vitamins, not like usable forms of the vitamins. Brought it to the neurologist's attention, and he said, I never thought to check that. And that was it. It's like red pill moment.
That was just like wheels are off at that point.
Exactly.
You're going all in on this.
Yeah, totally. So it was like I went all in. I actually worked on essentially a baby formula in my kitchen. Food dehydrators, food processors. I took paleo superfoods and made these powders that you could then mix with water, dehydrated powders. And I'd read the 4 Hour Work Week. I was hating the music industry at that point. I was just burnt out, going to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, 300 nights a year, And I was like, I can do something with this. It was cleared by Vanderbilt Neurology to give to Savannah in her G-tube, which was amazing. So she's now getting like nutrient-dense whole foods instead of toxic sludge. But I actually took a bunch of salmon collagen, beef collagen protein, added it to that formula, got an actual manufacturer. And that was my first ever e-com project. So I launched the Perfect Paleo Powder. And one of my like debut moments was PaleoFX. New up-and-coming entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't have the money for a booth. And Michelle and Keith Norris at PaleoFX were like, we'll hook you up. They gave me like a huge discount, gave me a booth at PaleoFX. My dad and I stacked hundreds of bottles of Perfect Paleo Powder in an SUV and drove, 19 hours or whatever down to Austin, set up a booth at PaleoFX. Right across the lane from me is Dry Farm Wines. And there's David Allred. And he's just super friendly, comes over, says what's up. Hey, we're having this party, blah, 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 blah. Takes me to this party. I met Rob Wolf. I met Abel James, who's now back here in Austin, who's one of my best friends. I love him. So I met Rob Wolf, Abel James, Mark Sisson. First time I met Mark Sisson. I met Diana Rogers.
Wow.
And then me, Diana, and Rob ended up working together because I was one of the funders for Sacred Cow, the documentary in 2016. And next thing I know, I'm like in the middle of PaleoFX at the event. I'm in my gi and I'm rolling jiu-jitsu with Rob Wolf. And the last several years, I'm listening to Rob Wolf's podcast. I'm listening to Abel James' podcast. I'm like listening to all these shit. Now they're like my homies. I was like, it was so quick. And it was this kind of like, it was really kind of my first introduction to, I think we kind of create our own reality, Yeah. And then here we are 10 years later or whatever. I guess that was 2016. So 8 years since that first PaleoFX. But it was transformative, man. And the early days, it really, really, PaleoFX ended up blowing up a couple years ago or whatever, but it was a super cool community. Like, I don't think I met anybody at PaleoFX where I was like, this person is fully self-serving. It was like everyone had a transformation story. Like Rob Wolf's digestion was horrible for years and he couldn't figure it out. And people told him to eat whole grains and it got worse and whatever. And like Abel had his own transformation story and like was on death's door, like doing what his doctor was telling him in his mid-20s. Like it was just everybody had a story like mine or like my niece's, like Savannah's, right? So like everybody came to this place where like, yeah, we were all passionate about entrepreneurship, but it was like, you know, I think there's a term for it, like passion-based profits or something like that, where it's like we all cared so much about what we were doing that it felt like a cool little family. And you mentioned this about when you were coming up early and you met Justin Nault. Just people that had found so much success, or like in my mind, these people are almost like celebrities because I'm listening to them on a podcast and it feels like celebrity-esque. And then they're so sweet. They're so nice. Like I was like, you know, imposter syndrome. Like I've never had business before with it. And everyone's just like, yo, you want to come hang out? And I was like, yes, I do want to hang out, you know? And it was magic. And I made like lifelong friendships and got involved in really cool projects. And here we are.
This might be naive of me to think this, but you said that was the first time that you like thought of like you can create your own reality. And I would think that as a musician, there's so much bandwidth in terms of just the like everyone talks about the struggling artist, and the first struggling artist I think of is musicians because it's such a hard path to go down. But I mean, you actually reached a point of having a large amount of success in music. So like, I would have thought that maybe that was when you like were thinking about you know, that concept of creating your own reality. Is there something specific about just like entering a new space and having it kind of just be like a blank slate? Is that kind of why it felt like that?
Yeah, well, by that point, I had played with psychedelics, where previously I had not. I'd never done, you know, when I first did ayahuasca about 10 years ago, my first ever psychedelic experience was ayahuasca in the jungle with Don Howard. I got myself down to Peru, and it was terrifying. Like, I did Mount Everest first, you know? It was like I'd never taken a mushroom, I never tried anything. But the music industry is like very alcohol heavy, so I drank a lot of alcohol, and that was about it. And it never really struck me that I had created this reality. Like, I started playing piano when I was 8 years old, and adults were freaking out. They're like, this is the next Billy Joel. It was crazy. And I became like kind of a little small town celebrity. Like in my hometown at 17 years old, I was making $250 an hour playing piano. Wow. It was crazy. That's like, what? Unreal. And then I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I placed in all these songwriting contests and stuff. So they took me down to Nashville, and I'm in the studio with Vince Gill and Reba McEntire and all these like huge people. Then I moved down to Nashville. And I mean, within about 8 months of being in Nashville, like I heard this thing of like, you're going to play for tips and you make $40 a night, whatever. And I was like 8 months into my Nashville career, and I was making six figures and had full health benefits. And I was like, this starving artist thing is bullshit. This isn't true. You know? I'm like, and I really just like turned it into something really cool. It was awesome. And, you know, by 25, I'd like bought a couple houses and stuff. And like, it's actually, you're the first person to ask me that question. It's odd. I've never gone back and been like, how did I not see that I was creating that reality? I still was of the belief that life was happening to me. Just like, oh, this is how it goes. Things happen in life, and like, yeah, I can play piano, and seems I can make some money doing it that way. But I was never doing like visualizations, or I wasn't meditating. I wasn't doing anything like that. I just was like, this is how it goes, I guess. You know, I was on autopilot.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's interesting that you've been doing music for so long. So like it just probably felt like more of the same track that you had been on. But this pivot into the health space is so cool, and I think it's inspiring for a lot of people. You know, like Brett and myself, neither of us have a background in the health and wellness space. We played college sports, but us getting into this whole movement started with us writing Twitter threads and just kind of like putting ourselves out there. And I really resonate with the idea of just feeling for the first time like I actually have so much more control of the outcomes that are happening in my life. The things that are happening to me are a direct result of my beliefs and then the things that I'm actually doing in the world. And so, you know, things that had kept me from going out and going after that business idea or just getting into the health and wellness space, you know, that to me always just felt like something I wasn't going to be able to do, or, you know, for whatever reason, it just wasn't a track that I was interested in pursuing right after school. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, dude, I wish I had just started that track sooner. But everything happens the time it's supposed to.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of like when the mind tricks that happen in your brain, because I think the same thing, man. Because I'm around so many people, like now I know all these like 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs, right? I'm like, man, if I would have found e-commerce when I was 18, I'd be so much richer. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, no, man, like everything that I went through, actually like catastrophic business things that happened to me are how I ended up in this mastermind in Croatia, which is where I met my now fiance. She was a super successful entrepreneur. She was a keynote speaker at this event. Like, the most successful company I own right now is an Amazon company. I met my Amazon partner at that event, and none of those things could have happened the way that they did, because everything happens the only way it could have. We're here in the present moment because it's the only way things could have gone.
Totally.
And it's a fun little mind trick to be like, what if I learned e-commerce at 18 years old when Google ads were a penny per impression? You know what I mean? Like who knows what would have happened, but I wouldn't be here. And I love here. I'm happy to be here. You know?
Yeah, totally. So you get through your first PaleoFX, you're in the space. What draws you to continue to keep going and just like push further into putting the, because I think when I think about you and in the, you know, the style of, you know, you're putting out products, but I really resonate with the content that you put out. You know, you've put out a lot of volume when it comes to podcasts and just great information. So what kept you kind of going in that direction?
Yeah, it was interesting. What happened was I didn't know. I mean, now, especially in Austin, right? You throw a rock and you hit a coach, you know?
Dude,
so it's like,
especially where we are right now.
Exactly. And that wasn't a thing, you know, in 2016. I didn't really know many people that were doing that. I'd heard of some people doing some cool stuff with ClickFunnels and like Lady Boss and all these people that were doing some cool stuff. But I just thought, you know, that the path to like an 8-figure exit was like start a physical products brand, you know? So I was doing the supplement stuff. And then I did not know what I was doing. And I got involved with people who made big promises and turned out to be total shysters. And I lost a boatload of money. There was an actual criminal lawsuit. Like me and 4 other people sued these people. And like, I'm not supposed to talk about it or whatever, but like it was gnarly. And I lost a ton of money up front in my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I'd manufactured a bunch of product that expired and had thousands of dollars of product got thrown away. It was really not good. And I was so afraid, where I was like, I can't spend money on this stuff, man. I can't lose any more money. And I had learned about Gary Vee. And he's just talking about like, just make content. Like the content model, he has like the Gary Vee content model or whatever. I was like, okay. And I just went live on Facebook one day and I called it an Ask Me Anything. I heard that term on Reddit or Twitter or whatever. I was like, I'll do an Ask Me Anything. Because I'd been researching for years at this point, health and wellness. And then just my friends on Facebook who started asking me questions, and I'd talk about like, you know, A1 versus A2 dairy, and people were like, what? I've never heard of this. And I was like, really? I kind of thought that some of the things I knew were common knowledge, and I realized they weren't. So that Asked Me Anything, I did it on a Wednesday night, and I ended up doing that for 115 weeks straight.
Wow.
And following Gary Vee's content model of just like, I'll make Instagram posts about it, I'll make YouTube posts about it. And that was when the community took off. I started a private Facebook group. That private Facebook group now has 11,500 members. I have 650,000 social media followers, email lists, the whole thing. And that was when everything shifted for me, because yes, I was passionate with what happened with Savannah, and I thought that my powder was the best powder in the world and it could help people. I didn't realize yet the extent to which I could help people. And I remember I made 400 custom nutrition plans for 400 individual people for free.
Wow.
And I was like, just send me before and after pictures. And people were dropping like 100 pounds. And I'm getting video testimonies of people crying that are like, you have completely changed the way that I see the world. This whole food versus poison thing changed my whole life. My kids are eating better, blah, blah, blah. And like, I have goosebumps talking about it. You know, I was like, I didn't know this was going to happen. And then connecting the dots, when I look back, I'm like, my video content was popping off so quick. And I was like, oh, dude, I hit my 10,000 hours of stage time when I was 20.
Yeah.
You know, so like getting on camera was so easy. I didn't have a lot of the same fears of people like, someone's gonna make fun of me or judge me, whatever. It's just like the camera turns on and I can be myself in front of a camera.
Totally.
You know? So it all really kind of lined up perfectly. And that was it, really. Like when I look back at Ask Me Anythings, they're still in my podcast. I'll say like AMA number 1, AMA number 2, whatever. And like, that's how this whole thing happened. And then after PaleoFX, people like Rob and Abel and Diana Rogers were like, I'll come on your podcast. You know, I started Paul Saladino. I interviewed Paul when nobody knew who Paul was, you know? And it just kind of happened in this way where then I just became deeply passionate about spreading information. But I didn't know it was an option until it presented itself as an option to me, you know?
Yeah. It's so cool seeing how your music career actually like perfectly set you up for what your true passion ended up being in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you that beforehand. Like, was there anything else that you see, like just looking backwards, connecting all the dots, was there any other experience that you had early on that has really helped propel you forward and have some of that early success moving into a new space?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was really, my reality show was on ABC, you know?
That's crazy.
I was part of a global talent search for musicians, and it was whittled down to top 11 from the planet. And I was like, what? And I was one of them. They took me to LA, and I'm like in this kind of hotel, like banquet hall or whatever, and they bring in an upright piano, and I'm playing for like the creator of The Real World and the creator of The Amazing Race, and like ABC's there and sponsored by Budweiser or whatever. And then they whittled that wasn't aired. That was them whittling it down to top 3, which was the TV show filmed in Vegas. And I was top 3. And I was the American. And I didn't realize they were doing this like country thing. So it was me and a girl from Canada and a girl from the UK. So it's the comfort in front of a camera that I didn't realize was going to be so powerful. Like being on stage and playing live and everything, like that was cool. But it's this, like lights, camera, action. Dude, I know so many people with just epic messages and epic things to share, and I've tried to interview them or film them. Like, we have friends that are becoming influencers, and I mean, like, they're so smart.
Yeah.
They will transform the world with their knowledge, and they're so cool. They're best friends. We hang out. I love them. And then you turn a camera on, and they're like,
just a different person.
Hello, I would like to tell you about my knowledge, right? And it's like,
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I'm like, and I want to like help them so bad, and I realize like I'm so grateful for all of those experiences that I had, the very high pressure situations under cameras where I'm like, this is nothing to me, you know? It's like I'm able to. I don't mean that in some way of like, look at how good I am in front of a camera, but I mean, I'm comfortable enough to explain the information in my mind in a way that gets across to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Like I said here, you're like, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, dude, I just want to have a conversation. That's it.
Chat.
Like, let's just let it go where it's going to go. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could do that without the level of comfort behind a camera, you know, or in front of a camera, I should say.
I love that. Is there anything, when you started that Facebook community and started putting more content out there, was there anything in particular that you kept going back to where people were really resonating with? Was it the weight loss stuff, or was there other things in there that people were really drawn to?
It was always weight loss, man. And I talk about that to this day as like, I am very public about the fact that Clovis is a Trojan horse. I think, controversial thoughts, right? I think the number one reason for the obesity epidemic is people are not living the life that they are supposed to live and the life that they want to live. They have trapped themselves in prisons of their own making. Terrible jobs, terrible relationships, or it's that, you know, they've been overweight their whole lives, so they lack confidence, so they choose terrible partners that don't treat them well because they have low self-worth and they don't know they don't think that they deserve the life of their dreams or whatever. Like, the health and wellness journey is 100% a personal development journey. It has very little to do with information. Which diet do you follow? And that's why people, veganism changed my life. Carnivore changed my life. Keto changed my life. They all change your life, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you remove toxic poison from your diet, you're going to get healthier, you know?
Totally.
So it was the concept of food versus poison that I was just hammering on all along the way. And I was getting destroyed for it at the time, right? It's so nice now that we have Make America Healthy Again and RFK. I don't care where you stand politically. Like, getting poison out of our food system is important.
Yeah, and it should be apolitical.
It should be apolitical, for sure.
Like,
so now that it's in the mainstream sort of zeitgeist, or whatever we call it, like, people are aware of seed oils. People are aware that we have toxic ingredients in our food in America that's banned in other countries. That's really important for people to know. So that's what I just kept harping on over and over and over. And what's interesting from a sort of a spiritual mindset perspective is, like, if I look at it like a pyramid of like self-actualization, right? The base is we are energy creation machines. That's what we do. All of our cells create energy, and that's how we function. Depressed and anxious subjects in clinical studies, they make 20% less ATP, less energy. Depression is a low energy problem. Anxiety is a low energy problem. Obesity is a low energy problem. We're told it's a too much energy problem. Calories in, calories. It's a low energy problem. Everyone is in such a low energy state. They wake up in the morning, they hate what they see in the mirror, and they're like, oh, whatever. I'll just grab a bagel and a Dunkin' Donuts caramel macchiato, whatever, and I'll get in traffic and drive to this job that I hate where nobody respects me. And you're sitting there like, how do you expect your life to look the way that you want it to live when you're making these choices. But it's this vicious cycle. It's like chicken or the egg. Well, you hate the way your body looks. You hate the way you feel when you wake up. So why not just go to a place you hate? Everything else sucks anyway, right? And it's this like kind of spiraling thing. So I use it as a Trojan horse because when I could get people to just remove poison, then all of a sudden the conversation shifted, right? It's like someone will come to me day one, like, I hate my body. I need to lose 20 pounds in the next 7 days or everything will suck, you know? And it's just like terrible. They just couldn't get past like fat versus skinny. And I would explain to people all of the health and wellness problems you have, all of them, every single one, is just a result of your body not having had a long enough period of time without being poisoned. We have been poisoned since we were little babies, right? Medicine, baby formula, everything. So what ends up happening if you give me just 30 days, and we get on a coaching call day 1 and the coaching call day 31, and you have not taken in any poison, the questions are different, man. It's
a different person.
It's a different person. We have peeled away layers of the onion in programming, and all of a sudden they're like, man, they want to talk to me about, communication in their romantic relationship. Or, you know what? It's so interesting. I realized I had like a lot of toxic stuff in my diet and I cleaned it up. And then I was at work and I was like, man, these people don't treat me very well. Like my superior is kind of a dick, and it's crazy. It's like we were saying earlier, I didn't know in the past that I was creating my own reality. I didn't really understand that. I was just on autopilot. These people are so on autopilot, they get their cells functioning better and they start asking better questions and they start analyzing their life as a whole. And I have this video called the Clovis philosophy where I help them connect every aspect of their life, like health, wealth, relationships, community, everything. And it all plays together in this big giant puzzle that you have to put together for like holistic health. And that was it, man. Like get the poison out of their systems, their questions start to change. And all of a sudden I had people in the Clovis Academy, the Facebook group, that are driving across state lines to meet their friends that they met in the group. And people quitting their jobs and starting their own business. We have a bunch of multi-million-dollar businesses that were started from people listening to my podcast. They quit their job, they start an Amazon company like I did with the Paleo Powder, and they start making money. And it's like, that's when I realized I was like, oh, I teach freedom. I don't teach weight loss. But so many people are trapped in the obsession with body image and weight loss that when they're like, hey, I really need to lose weight. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I got you. Come on in. The water's fine, right? And then 90 days later, it's like, what else do you want to work on? Let's move into the more important shit,
Dude, I resonate so much with what you're saying, just particularly in terms of just the veil that gets lifted once you start eating properly. I've had a few different stints with just, I think like early on playing baseball, I was very serious about performance, but mostly in the context of being in the gym. And so I wasn't eating entirely like I wasn't eating perfectly. And that showed up in a lot of different ways. Like in high school, I was just eating the lunch, like all the stuff that they put out for lunch, pizza, chips, subs, like all of it. Yeah. And I was just hammering it in the weight room. So it didn't show up anywhere other than like I had bad skin issues. And then I get to college and continuing to go down the rabbit holes of how do I perform better, working out in the gym really well, and then started doing a paleo diet. That was like a complete aha moment for me where I was like, oh my gosh, if I fuel this meat machinery that I have properly, I just think so much better. Yeah. And then I kind of like downshifted back into corporate job, slowed down, slower energy state, basically all the things that you're talking about. And when COVID hit, it was kind of that paradigm shifting moment for me. Started just really prioritizing my health again in a way that I really hadn't been in the last handful of years, and got on a keto diet. And within a month, like the amount of progress I had made from just a physical, spiritual, mental standpoint was incredible. I was sleeping more. My body was the best that it's felt in a long, long time. And I was having these just incredible thoughts and beliefs that like, okay, I'm going to get out of this job. I'm going to figure out what's next, what my purpose is here. Like that was a catalyst moment for me. My whole life was tapping into like 30 days of eating well. Yeah.
It's that quick, man.
It's that quick. Yeah.
And it's so funny because people will come to me and they're upset about how long it takes to get healthy, to truly get healthy, right? Because like if you're 300 pounds and you want to look like, we were joking about our buddy Kyle Kingsbury, and you want to look like Kyle Kingsbury, like you're probably on a 10-year journey to go from 300 pounds to Kyle Kingsbury, right? But you can go from 300 pounds to 180 pounds in a year, year and a half, 2 years, right?
Totally.
And your entire life will transform. And it feels like this thing, oh, it takes so long. You're like, dude, 30 days of truly cleaning up the diet is transformative. And when you think about the fact, most people don't come to me till they're over the age of 35, that you can feel better after 35 years of poison in 30 days? This is like a gift from the universe, man. And it's a cheat code. It's literally a cheat code. It feels like Super Mario Brothers. Like you ate the mushroom and you grow and you're more powerful. But it's like a 30-day reset can be transformative for your whole life.
So how do you think about everything that you've done in the context of all the work that you've put out there, the lives that you've transformed, and now we have this Maha movement come along?
Yeah.
It's like the most exciting time to be in health and wellness, I think.
It's incredible. There's never, I mean, it's one of those reality creation things where I'm like, did I make this happen? Did I do this?
Dude, you played a huge part in it.
Yeah, I think so, right? And I don't mean that from obviously I'm not the guy behind Casey and Callie Means, and RFK has been doing this for 40 years, man. He's been going after everybody poisoning civilians for 40 years. So people have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's if you believe in something like the collective consciousness or whatever you want to call it, right? Is like, yeah, more people are waking up and a groundswell happens and it starts to push. Like, I told you this, and sparing names, I recorded a podcast in this room 2 years ago that got pulled down off YouTube because too much hate was coming at it. And literally all I was saying is like, maybe eat foods that exist in nature and get some sunshine and get good quality sleep and don't eat poison. And it was like the most controversial thing. And we got attacked ruthlessly, and that creator was having nasty DMs sent to him and all this stuff. And there has to come a tipping point has to happen where that sort of hate isn't happening anymore, right? And now we have, on a national and global level, conversations about seed oils and toxic ingredients in food and everything. I could not be more excited about it, man. It's amazing. And when I started seeing people like Rogan and Chris Williamson, like having Callie and Casey Means on, and I'm like, man, this is epic. This is like truly a society-changing shift.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
I feel like we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, but it's been a lot of big and small contributions from a lot of people who are just like, I'm going to make this my life's purpose. Like I heard you were on a podcast. I forget the name of the gentleman, but I was watching the YouTube video, and he was saying, this is my God-given purpose to be talking about this stuff. And he had a medical background. It was super cool hearing him say that. And I do feel like there's a lot of people, like I think of Mark Sisson and just like all the work that he's been doing, and Rob. I mean, he's taken so much heat and flack for some of the stances that he's made. And it does feel like we're entering this period where now these people are going to start to be acknowledged for a lot of the work that they've been doing and a lot of the sacrifices they've made. But it's hard not to just be optimistic.
Yeah. I heard somebody talk about this the other day, because I think about this with Rob. Like I'm looking at your Element drink, right? And like Rob has now absolutely crushed as an entrepreneur. He's doing very well. He doesn't have to get on the internet and help you change your life. He wants to. RFK doesn't have to do what he's doing. He wants to, So it really is this thing where people are so passionate and they're so driven about this thing that they're doing, and it's so meaningful for them. And that's the thing, is I think people can feel that energy, the Mark Sissons and the Rob Wolfs of the world and everything, where it's just like, man, Rob's been doing this for 20 plus years, man. I don't even know how long he's been doing it. Mark Sisson with like Mark's Daily Apple, his first thing he did. I talked to Abel James about it. His first thing was, man, I forget. Honest Abe. He had a blog called Honest Abe before he did Fat Burning Man. And so like people are really passionate about spreading this message. And I think that it's like the difference here, and I always get into trouble when I start talking about credentials, but the guy that I was talking with is Justin Roethlingshofer. Yes. I always struggle with his last name, Justin Roethlingshofer, and he owns Own It Health. And we had this great conversation where like he's got a master's degree and he was going for his PhD and everything, and like actually left the PhD program when he was close to getting it, because he's like, this is nonsense. And now he has this team of registered dietitians and MDs that he calls the misfits of academia that were like, this is not right. We know this isn't right? So people that are like passionate enough to come at this from a place of care, which is where the podcast that I had that got pulled down and all that stuff is people that are fully bought into the dogma of mainstream academia, the medical system, not realizing their textbooks are funded by pharmaceutical companies and that kind of thing. And they're just like, you sit down and shut up because I'm a PhD and you're not, right? And the number of people that have come through Clovis that have been gaslit and drugged to death by every doctor they've ever gone to. And they don't feel heard. They don't feel understood. They feel like nobody's listening to them. Everyone's calling them liars and gaslighting them. I had a client once through those in her 50s. She held a master's degree in nutrition and like nutrition sciences or whatever, and could never lose weight. For 30 years was obese. And she's like, I can't figure this out. She's like, the number of like 25-year-old shirtless Planet Fitness trainers who have told me I don't track calories properly. It's just this constant gaslighting. You can feel the energy is different, right? It's like there are all these people out in the world that are like, sit down with me. Let's have a conversation. I used to do this on my podcast. I have 90-minute long conversations with clients, people who have never been on a podcast or in front of a camera in their lives that lost 100 plus pounds. And I'm like, it's going to be a very gentle conversation. Don't worry. We're going to get on. We're going to talk like friends. Can you just tell people what you've been through? And it was amazing. It was like super powerful content of these people just sharing their journey. And when I asked them, like, what drew you to Clovis? Like, you're the first person that told me I've been lied to. And that this is not entirely my fault, and that I don't lack willpower, and I'm just a lazy slob that can't get their shit together. Like, you're the first person who felt like you were fighting for me, fighting with me, rather than talking at me. Of like, listen, I'm a PhD, and I'm telling you it's calories in, calories out. You're saying you're eating 900 calories a day and you're still fat. You are a liar. So how about you get your shit together? Nobody wants to be helped, quote unquote, in that energy.
In that way.
You know, that's really what I love right now is it really feels like society has people that are fighting on their behalf. And that's magic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's amazing seeing people's belief system shift. Like that's really what's happening in that instance, going from the credentialed PhD who's just giving you blanket advice and kind of almost keeping you trapped in a limiting belief. Whereas you're like, let's shift this framework that you're looking at this problem through and empower you to make these changes. And I think at the end of the day, like I would love to get your take on calories in, calories out and why you like the reason why you think that model, it just shouldn't be as prevalent as it is.
Sure. I mean, one, I think the biggest problem in health and wellness right now is the illusion of authority. And I think that that's true in every aspect of everything, right? Like there's a great book on this called Weapons of Mass Instruction that is about how the public school system was literally designed to, I guess the word would be infantilize adults. It was trying to keep people young, the infant mind, as long as humanly possible. So you can then move them into factory work and all this stuff. You're literally stunting their maturity. You know, it's like founding fathers, whatever. We had 12-year-olds that are sailing ships to different countries and fighting wars and stuff. Literally. You know? It's like, and now it's just like we got 28-year-olds like vaping and addicted to porn in their mom's basement.
Playing
like,
Xbox.
Exactly, and we're trying to fix that, right? But the calories in, calories out thing, this happens all the time where like we'll make videos about how it's not about calories, it's about nutrient density, micronutrients, whatever, and everyone's just like, thermodynamics, right? And they throw this thermodynamics term out there. Nothing, calories in, calories out on its face is technically true in some ways,
right?
Where it's like thermodynamics is real, right? Like if you don't have enough energy in the system, the system, the human body, which is like an open energy system, is going to conserve energy in some way, shape, or form. The best way for it to do that is actually to store body fat. It actually makes more sense for the system to attack its own lean tissue than it does to tap into those body fat stores for a number of reasons. One, because fat is the most energy dense. So if we're trying to store energy for later, it makes sense to store something that's 9 calories per gram instead of 4, less than half, right? And then also our fat cells are storing toxins. So a fast way, you know, lipids are hydrophobic. So to pull toxins out of the system, our bodies will store toxins in fat cells. So there's a number of reasons why storing fat is incredibly beneficial, right? I always try to help clients shift this. We flip it on its head. Your body's not doing anything wrong when you're getting fat. Oh my God, I'm so fat. It's like, yeah, because your body's trying to protect you. It's trying to adapt to an unnatural environment that you've placed it in, right? So what happens when obese people come to any trainer, nutritionist, whatever? Is I feel cold all the time. My hair's thinning and falling out. I have no libido. I'm in a bad mood. I'm depressed and I'm anxious and I have no energy to get out of bed in the morning, right? Does that sound like a too much energy problem? No, of course not. They're all coming to us with low energy symptoms. And it's because of the idea of energy balance, energy in, energy out, is actually potential energy in and actual energy out. Like if you have a car that's full of gasoline and no spark plugs, there's no energy in that car. There's potential energy. There's a full gas tank of potential energy, but you need a catalyst for the energy to be created. We need a catalyst at the level of the entire, like going from glycolysis and beta oxidation through the Krebs cycle into the electron transport chain to actually generate ATP in the body, we need all these little steps all along the way that all include micronutrients, right? So the shift away from nutrients and onto calories is very detrimental, because if someone's metabolism is completely dysfunctional and you start feeding them 1,000 calories a day, this is where you end up, what we now have an epidemic of, is where you end up with sarcopenic obesity, which are people that are clinically obese, which is just a clinical term for at least 30 pounds or more overweight, and they have osteoporosis. Like, their bones are brittle. And you're going to feed that person 1,200 calories a day, 1,000 calories a day, right? The problem is only going to get worse. And then they're going to get old, they're going to fall down and break their hip and die on their kitchen floor. It's insane, man. Like, so I'm trying to help people see when they say this, like, oh, bro, they'll leave these troll comments, bro forgot about thermodynamics. It's like, no, I'm well aware of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
Your comment is displaying your ignorance of thermodynamics. Because yes, if we don't have enough calories for the body to do what it needs to do, it's going to strip tissue to make up the energy difference. You cannot guarantee that that is coming from body fat, which is why you have all these bros, the gym bros, that are 21 years old or 25 years old or whatever, and they have time. They're in the gym 6 days a week, and they're eating, white rice and chicken every day. And yes, their body is going, holy shit, this guy is lifting a ton of weights for 90 minutes a day. We need to preserve this muscle mass, and we're going to pull from other things. So they start to burn body fat and all these things. It works for them. And they're like, look, thermodynamics, right? With me, I've experimented myself so much that I understand when I strip down to 8% body fat, my testosterone's 250. I'm 14% body fat right now, and I'm 38 years old on 0 supplements, and my testosterone's 850, which is amazing for my age, right? It's so simple, man. Like, it's so crazy for us to tell people who are in a low energy state to consume less energy. And the entire complexity and the madness of it, and the people of like, oh my God, my calories, this, it all goes away if you just don't eat poison.
Yeah.
You can go eat 2,500 calories a day as a woman of real nutrient-dense whole foods. And what's going to happen? Your metabolic rate is going to skyrocket. So one of the first things I have clients do is we take their morning temperature before they've even rolled out of bed. Some women come to me, their core body temperature in the morning is 94 degrees. This is a walking corpse, brother.
Jeez.
You need energy to function. We have to kill this idea of calories in, calories out. And I don't care, man, when somebody comes to me and they're like, look at me, I have a six-pack, right? I have a term for it now. I call it infertile six-packs.
I love that.
The number of men running around that are giving advice online, follow me to be healthy, and they're completely bald because they don't know that bald is a hypothyroid state.
They're probably on TRT or something.
They're on TRT. They're on peptides. They're doing a cold plunge every morning. They're doing intermittent fat, right? It's like they have the freedom. It's like, yeah, go tell. I had a woman named Shannon. I have a video testimony for her, and she's like, scream my stuff from the rooftops, tell everybody about it. She was homeschooling 8 kids when she came to me. She lost over 100 pounds with me. Do you know how many times she went to the gym? 0. Did not step foot in a gym. Lost over 100 pounds while homeschooling 8 kids.
Wow.
So Mr. 25-year-old bro with a six-pack that's, working at Planet Fitness for $40 an hour, he doesn't get to tell Shannon, just do what I do.
Yeah.
No, you can fuck right off. Move along, So I know these people leave these comments like that. They're not working with real people, with real lives, with responsibilities, people who depend on them, jobs that they work, homeschooling 8 kids, whatever. So it's very disheartening for these people. They're getting yelled at by these humans with like quite unnatural bodies, you know, that are just like, I'm shredded, listen to me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like you have authority because you're able to portray yourself in a certain way because you're young, your body reacts well to all the different stimulus that you're giving it. And, for the average person who's just looking for actual health advice, the calories in, calories out model, I think you phrased it perfectly and framed that really well, where it's like you are not getting the amount of nutrients that you need to have energy and be healthy and support all of the, your hormonal balance, your energy levels, all of it.
Yeah.
And it's coming at a cost. I think you can think that you'll lose that weight, but by just cutting calories. But at the end of the day, you're looking at this narrow lens of your health when it's a much broader picture. There's much a broader scope there. Yeah.
Here's the most important thing, right? And this is like when we get into credentials and everything. I always joke and I say my credentials are that there are Clovis tattoos. So when people start tattooing your brand on them because you changed their lives, we can talk about your credentials.
Winning.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we have a term in my primary company is called Clovis, and we have a term called Clovis babies. Clovis babies are when a woman comes to me and they have at least one failed attempt at IVF, trying to get pregnant through IVF. Some people have 2-3 rounds. They've spent $150,000 trying to do IVF therapy, and them and their partner cannot get pregnant. They come to Clovis. 12 months later, they're conceiving naturally. It's like magic. Seems like magic, right? The magic is stop eating poison and eat way more food. I'm often doubling these women's caloric intake, literally doubling their food intake. Their skin issues clear up. They feel better. Their depression goes away. The number of women I've gotten off antidepressants, I don't even know. I have no idea how many. Gotten off birth control, whatever, right?
Wow.
And then I get these pictures or these video testimonials of women crying and like pictures of them with their big baby bump, and they're like, Clovis baby, you know? Dude, if you think about it, right? If you're, like you said, your meat machine, if your meat machine is just trying its best to survive and feel as good as it can and optimize its own health, and you say, all right, listen, we're going to feed your meat machine 1,000 calories a day. And now you're like in this starvation mode and your hair is falling out and you're tired and you're anxious and all this stuff. And then you say, now please support another human life. It's not going to happen. You're sending a signal to the human machine, which is just an adaptation machine. The input coming into the adaptation machine is there is famine in this environment. For whatever reason, this human is not feeding me enough, not feeding my machine enough, right? The spirit that is inside this avatar is not feeding us enough. There's not enough resources to go around. Why would we bring another mouth to feed into a famine? We wouldn't do it. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, so it's like, how do you get these Clovis babies? Like I don't know if people think I'm like injecting them with hormones. I'm not a doctor. I can't write them prescriptions, right? So I'm not injecting them with hormones, not doing anything. Just eat more.
Right.
Eat more food. And when you break it down like that, it's so simple. It's like food in any amount is only good for you. But you have to be very careful about what you call food because poison in any amount is only bad for you. So the idea of everything in moderation, calories in, calories out, it's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't understand like a lot of the people that are pushing this are incredibly intelligent people. You know, I don't know if you heard my podcast with Steve when I was on Radical Health Radio. People ask me why I don't fight back, right? If people make a stitch video or they, you know, say something about me or call me names or whatever, it's because I genuinely love all of those people, man. They're perfect exactly as they are. And they're also helping people. They're helping their target demographic, right? Like Layne Norton has probably helped more 25-year-olds than I can count bench press more weight and get a six-pack, right? They're doing great work in the world, man. It's amazing. That's it, right? It's like I'm not tied to the thing where like, why would I go fight in this thing? I'm not speaking to them. I'm not trying to change their mind about something. I'm talking to the people who are feeling desperate and are feeling left behind and feeling gaslit and all these things. They're the people that I'm talking to. That's the importance of the message, right? I'm not really interested in fighting over these things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I feel like diet culture, and this is honestly just our culture in general, like everyone has this deep, not everyone, but people have this deep desire to be right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just love people who are like, I'm going to put out there what I know to be true and get results and not fight these battles every day. Like you wasting your energy fighting with Layne Norton does no good for the person who, you know, is homeschooling 8 kids and needs your help, you know?
Yeah. And I also think all these people are probably amazing outside of like influencer life. Yeah. And I say all the time, I'm sure there are people that have made videos about me or whatever where like, if neither one of us were influencers, whatever that word means, right? If neither one of us were influencers and we just met in a social setting in Austin, we'd probably be friends.
Yeah.
We have a lot of common interests. A lot of these guys, you know, we all lift weights. We roll jujitsu. We do whatever, you know? We'd be homies for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not that way on social media.
Yeah, social media is a bloodbath.
Totally.
Going back to the IVF conversation, does it surprise you how many women are not eating enough food?
It's all of them.
It's crazy.
I've never had a woman come to me eating enough food. Not one single time. And this is the thing, right? When you break it down to nutrients too, it's like maybe they are eating 3,000 calories a day and maybe that's too much food for them. But any woman who comes to me that's eating 3,000 calories a day, their diet's 75% ultra-processed food.
Wow.
So is it the calories that's the problem or the fact that they're taking in all of those calories that are nutrient poor? They're not even getting vitamins and minerals, right? One of my favorite books for like removing the dogma of this stuff is Eat Like the Animals. And Eat Like the Animals talks about this across the whole animal kingdom from like flies up to tigers and humans. Is like seems to be about at least 15% total calories from protein satiates the body. But then we have food engineers, and this is what RFK talks about and all this stuff, is we have these food engineers that make food as addictive as possible. You and I talked about Philip Morris and the cigarette companies buying food companies and all this stuff. It's like the reason for that is they shifted all of the language to calories, and Justin Roethlingshofer and I talked about this. Because it's easier to just be like, well, eat this 90-calorie bar because it's low calories and it's healthy for you. And they take the focus off of nutrients, right? So if someone's eating 3,000 calories a day and they're obese, is it the calories that's the problem, or the fact that they're in a low energy state because they don't have enough micronutrients for their metabolism to function properly? You know, because we could keep them at 3,000 calories a day and shift it to 100% nutrient dense whole foods. They're eating nothing but like grass-fed beef and like pasture-raised poultry and whole eggs and organic fruits and vegetables and like sweet potatoes, right? That's their whole diet. And they're still eating 3,000 calories a day. Their life is going to improve. Their health is going to improve. They're going to lose body fat, right? So again, we get into thermodynamics. I have one client right now, and again, all these people are like, you can make this stuff public if you want. If anybody wants this, DM me. Go to Justin Nault Official on Instagram, DM me, and text me DEXA, and I'll send you this guy's results. Because he's been in the program for 90 days. All my programs are 90 days. And he has access to a DEXA machine. So he keeps doing these DEXA scans. And his body weight has only shifted by about 6 pounds. But it's 2 lines. Lean muscle mass, straight up. Body fat percentage, straight down. And this is what we call recomposition. So this is the holy grail of health and wellness. I don't care much if your body fat's going, if your scale weight is going down. If you're 375 pounds, which I've had clients in that situation, you're facing morbidity. This is like morbidly obese as like a medical term, right? We have to drop weight as quickly as possible. And I'm willing to do some things that are more stressful, that are not necessarily optimally healthy to get weight off quickly because it's such a problem. But if some guy comes to me and he's 200 pounds and he's 6 feet tall and he's like, dude, I just want to be like, I'm 25% body fat and I want to be 15% body fat. Like, cool, let's go. We're not going to worry about the scale weight. We're not going to worry about the thermodynamics of, are you technically losing tissue, right? I want to recomp. We want to get rid of the body fat and either preserve lean muscle mass or even build lean muscle mass at the same time, right? So I have a client here that's in a calorie deficit that is building muscle and losing body fat. In the calories in, calories out world, they'll say that that's impossible because thermodynamics. So they have to have a deeper understanding of thermodynamics and how it works, right? If you're in a calorie deficit, yes, you may lose some tissue, but you may also build tissue elsewhere if you're lifting weights and things like that, right? So it's a little more complex. It's just you have to pay attention to the whole puzzle. And it's like you said earlier, when your thinking improved, once you started to like fuel your body properly and everything, we're talking about critical thinking skills. We're talking about complex systems, thinking in complex systems and understanding what does thermodynamics mean in an open energy system versus a closed energy system, right? What does it mean to be losing tissue? Why does that happen? What drives what type of tissue is lost? All these things, these questions have to be answered, And the thing is, that last 2 minutes of me talking to some people might be like, that's really confusing, right? So it's like, okay, let's go back. Eat nutrient-dense whole foods. Don't eat poison. Get sunshine on your skin. Sleep well. It's so simple, man. It's so simple.
The whole time you're talking, I'm like, why? I wish doctors would approach health the way you're talking about it. And do you think about that ever?
I do, yeah. And I have amazing friends who are doctors. I have a network of the best doctors all around the world, right? And Justin is an example of this. He has his team at Own It Health. It's like fantastic doctors. And if anybody wants to talk to Justin and be intro to Justin, just DM me on Instagram. I'll put you right in touch with Justin. You can talk to him, right? So then they have MDs that can do blood work, and they have registered dietitians on their teams. They have therapists on their team and everything, right? It's understanding that there are, he calls them the misfits, right? It's like Paul Saladino. Paul Saladino is a doctor.
Yep.
And he became this. Ken Berry's a doctor, right? All these different doctors that are all over the place, that are waking up to this, that have done their own research, that have kind of rejected the mainstream narrative. There are amazing doctors that know way more than I do, right? The issue there, and this is where we can get into some of your stuff, because you're going to be way more well-versed in this, like the economics of this whole thing, is when I tell people that, hey, let me introduce you to this doctor who knows what I know and can write you prescriptions and do whatever else you need, right? A primary care physician. People come back, yeah, well, but does he take insurance? No, he doesn't. The best doctors in the world don't accept insurance. They operate outside of the system. So now again, we're back to freedom, right? So when you're in a situation where you really actually do need medical treatment because your health is so far gone, because there's absolutely a place and time for medical treatment. There are fantastic doctors that do incredible work, right? But it's like, oh, you have Blue Cross Blue Shield. So it's like, here are your people that you can go see. You don't even get to choose your own practitioner, dude.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
We've chosen them for you.
Exactly. I will never, ever exist in a world where someone is in charge of a paycheck that comes to me. I'm not going to do that. Someone is in charge of what doctor I can see, what place I can travel. I don't play those games, man.
Yeah.
Like, I want full freedom of access to whatever I want to access. And then that's a whole different story, where it's when people who have for 40 years, they've been going to a job where they have health benefits and a 401k and they go see this doctor and whatever. So to your question about doctors, those doctors exist. It's just access is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. The lack of competition in that space, you mentioned Blue Cross Blue Shield. They have their doctors that are in network. Mm-hmm. The lack of competition there, to me, all I see is a race to the bottom. Like, yes. That holds very little accountability for those doctors to truly treat patients the way you are, which is, I think it's just an entirely different model that we're talking about. And I'm hopeful. I do think that there can be a parallel model that is built out over the next several years, where the access right now for people to get access to these doctors who are the best in the world, they have to pay out of pocket for them. It's tough. Like, they are more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that you're basically banking on the fact that, like, they're going to keep you healthy, which, I think that if you're someone, speaking from my own experience, like, when I first quit my job and was just out on my own, I'm like, well, I don't really need health insurance.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that if I were to get hit by a bus or something, I would need, like, some accident insurance. So I signed up for a crowdfunding platform called Crowd Health, which is amazing.
Wow.
But for me, it's like, outside of that, I'm like, I don't really need a primary care like that I'm going to every single year.
No.
I need someone, I need support in ways of, like, going to the gym, having blood panels done, doing the basics. But outside of that, like, I don't really need that primary care. So yeah, long-winded way of saying, I feel like there's a system out there that we can build that's just away from these incentives that are keeping people sick.
Yeah, this is also why I'm so excited. Like you said, the Maha movement, as we call it, right? It's like, it's becoming in so many people's awareness, and, like, capitalism is capitalism. Someone's going to see an opportunity, and they're going to build this system that you're talking about, which is incredible, And that's the other thing too, is, like, I'm not anti-doctor, right? I have doctors that are some of my closest friends. It's like, I was mentored by Dr. Anthony J., PhD, biochemist, right? Worked at the Mayo Clinic for 20 years. He's a virologist, right? I'm on the phone with him every day during COVID. You tell me what's going on,
Dude,
Like,
unbelievable.
Yeah, and I respect these people so much. And they all know too. It's like, hey, we know how scientific funding happens for studies, and it's super corrupt. And we know that, like, the medical system is like, you have to do standard of care. If you're an in-network MD, you have to do standard of care, even if you know standard of care is wrong. Because if you don't do standard of care, you'll lose your license. And you're in a system where it's like, I'm not blaming the doctors, I'm blaming the system. So if you have to see 30 patients a day and you can see each one for 6 minutes and you got to check a box, and then they get, that's the way that it works. Like, that's a super stressful job. It's like crazy, right? It's not their fault that the thing is broken, but I do think that people will come along and will make this thing better. But again, it's kind of like when we talk about, like, I don't know if you went, but we went to the premiere of Fed Lie, the seed oils movie.
Dude, I wasn't able to make it, but I heard it was incredible.
It was so good, man. And, like, the panel at the end is a doctor who left the system and is saying, like, hey, man, I'm not waiting around for a specific randomized control trial that tracks people somehow over 6 years to see it's never going to happen. It's never going to get funded. It's never going to happen. So do I want to sit around and wait and keep eating 5 tablespoons of seed oils a day until someone tells me that it's not good for me? That's literally like standing in a burning building, and, like, you're at the front door of a burning building and your back has 3rd-degree burns because there's flames crushing you. And you're like, I don't think I'm going to step outside until the fire marshal tells me that it's safe to do so. Yeah. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
100%.
Yeah, the system is broken. And this is where I come back to authority. I am my own authority. I take extreme ownership for my life. It's not RFK's job to get me better insurance. It's not RFK's job to make sure that my doctor is magically in some kind of network that someone has now given me permission to go see that person. I'm going to take matters into my own hands and I'm going to do this, right? And a lot of times with clients and my group coaching and everything, I tell them exactly what my system looks like. I have catastrophic insurance. If my fiance or I get hit by a bus, we're covered. Now our deductible is going to be like $5,000, you know, but we're not going to get hit with $800,000 in medical bills to reset our bones. You know what I'm saying? It's like, there are ways to do this and protect yourself for sure. But why wait?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It all goes back to something you said earlier in the conversation, which is just the gaslighting that I feel like the medical system, with the authority that they have, they just have captured. They have the authority. They've captured people's attention. The credentials allow them to essentially like keep people in this trance that what I say is the only way.
Yeah.
And I feel like for the amount of time that that's been happening, we've just seen so many negative health outcomes where there is this revival of intuition, being the CEO of your own health, actually experimenting for yourself. I think there's nothing better than experimenting and figuring out some of these problems for yourself. I know you've benefited from that, but it's like, how do we inspire people to actually be willing to experiment a bit more outside of kind of the standard context of, you know, the go see your doctor and just have them prescribe you something?
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, when we talk about different frequencies of like being activated in different frequencies, is like anger is very useful for making change. And this is why like, I respect what you did so much with your early on Twitter threads and talking about how seed oils came to be and all this stuff. Or like if you go back to like the Flexnar report or John D. Rockefeller, like John D. Rockefeller invested $1 million of his own money, which is the equivalent of like $21 million today, to spread propaganda that says anyone doing naturopathy is a quack, right? You can only do allopathic medicine. This is what the science looks like, blah, 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 blah. And I always try to give people the example of like, everyone has heard of MLMs and pyramid schemes, and we all hate them, right? When Susie from the PTA says, do you want to come to my house on Friday night? We're having an Herbalife party. Everyone rolls their eyes, ugh, right? And it's like, Herbalife is a for-profit company who is funding their own studies on their products to say our products are the best, and then they're recruiting people and saying, now hold presentations and tell people how great our products are and sell them to people. This is a marketing funnel.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the thing. You and I are both very pro-capitalism. But this is what happens in capitalism, right? Is the most successful marketing funnels of all time are pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
There's been nothing bigger, you know? So when you have a situation where you have companies that are funding textbooks that train people and then hand them credentials and say, you are now the authority, go out into the world and sell our products.
It's brilliant thinking about it through the lens of a marketing funnel.
It's absolutely genius. So in a world where capitalism rules, the superpowers, the greatest superpowers in the world are run on capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at this, I always ask people, and you and I get it because we're entrepreneurs and we have to learn marketing to some degree. I just look around every day, no matter what I'm doing. I look around, I'm like, whose funnel am I in?
Yeah.
Whose marketing funnel am I in right now?
Oh,
somebody's. Somebody wants me to buy this flannel shirt. Somebody wants me to buy these sneakers. Somebody wants me to buy this drink. You know, it's constantly.
Totally.
So when you understand this is a for-profit machine and it's so big, they know they're killing people. Mainstream medicine is the third leading cause of death in America. But it's nearly impossible. And this is the other thing that I don't want too much government regulation. But like if you pump the brakes on this thing, if mainstream medicine evaporated, the GDP of our nation would suffer so many things. It would completely disrupt all of society because it's like this kind of too big to fail thing. It's like banks during COVID or whatever. It's these businesses that are too big to fail.
Yeah.
This is a behemoth, man. And you have a place where it's very difficult for somebody like Anthony J to be like, yeah, I'm a PhD. And that whole system I learned from is garbage, you know? And like, dude, I have so much respect for that guy.
Dude, he's incredible.
He's incredible.
I did a virtual podcast with him a while back, and we had such a good conversation.
He's brilliant.
And during COVID too, he was definitely one of the guys who was just like, I'm not just going to sit here and let this happen.
No.
Like I'm going to speak up. And I just really appreciated how vocal he was and how bold he was. He kind of, I think COVID was amazing. Obviously, like there's two sides of just how bad it was. And then on the other side of it, we get to see the character of a lot of these men who are now getting put into positions of leadership. Like they were the people who are now getting put in healthcare position leaderships in our country were the people who were getting shut down during COVID because they had contrary opinions. They were being bold. They were standing up and, you know, saying their opinion. And now, you know, it's just exciting to me to just think that time period that was so tough for a lot of people, 4 or 5 years afterwards, we're going to see potentially some benefits from it. Like people who are willing to just continue to be strong, make the change. So yeah, I'm incredibly encouraged by how bold a lot of these doctors have been. Like people within the system who are standing up, I'm like, let's go. Like you guys are heroes, because it's pretty easy to throw rocks at the, from the outside looking in, but those guys are truly taking a ton of risk.
Yeah. And you think about someone like Anthony, right? And this, like COVID was one of the worst things that ever happened in human history, right? And transitional periods are very challenging, right? Like some of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life made me a better version of myself.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, the collective consciousness. It's like we get put through stressful times so we can grow and expand. But this is the whole idea of like trust the science and trust credentials and this, that, the other thing. Where like Anthony J comes out and he's like, hand raised, he's like, hey, I'm a PhD biochemist and I've been at the Mayo Clinic for 20 years as a virologist. And I'm telling you, this is not the way we should be handling this. This is I know I can't even say the words without getting your podcast banned, but like we're going to stick something in your arm, right? And he's just like, this is not the way to do this. Hello, I'm trained in this. I literally am a virologist, and ends up leaving his position. He's like, I'm not going to be a part of this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that's so brave,
dude.
And the fact that he's just like dismissed, it shows you the propaganda machine is not going to fail. It's too big. And I don't think that what is happening now is could have happened in any way, shape, or form without the rise of social media. I think social media is like incredibly toxic in some ways. I think it's literally warped our brains in terms of like body image. We don't even know what normal human bodies look like anymore, man. It's just like it's been so bad in so many ways for body image and comparison culture. But the rise of podcasts and these conversations that are happening, like the beginning of COVID when I started making content around it, was the first time I ever had channel strikes on my YouTube and got videos pulled down. And you do this again, we're going to ban your. It was crazy, man.
Wow.
I never experienced that before.
Wow.
So it was good for showcasing again what I call the illusion of authority. Like it was kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Like we pulled back the curtain. We're like, this is the chubby little old man back here running this thing, and I don't think he knows what he's talking about. So it was like it's useful. It was useful, but it was very painful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I feel like COVID was definitely a period where people either rose or sank, unfortunately. And I love the idea of, I think that leaders were really challenged, and we saw that people just got to a point where it was like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
It makes me hopeful. Are you hopeful for what's to come?
Incredibly hopeful.
Yeah.
I think it's going to come a lot quicker than people realize.
Really?
Yeah.
Just the change that will happen?
Yeah, and I think it's because, not to get into politics again, like this should be really apolitical, but for the first time ever, there is, both politicians and non-politicians alike, like joining forces, and like the Elon Musks of the world being brought, like entrepreneurs being brought into like administration cabinets and like making changes, and you also have somebody who's not worried about re-election, So it's like, I think they're going to take a Mark Zuckerberg approach and they're going to move fast and break things. I hope.
Yeah.
But also, I studied a bit of history, not a ton, and like governments are very powerful things and they don't like to be disrupted. They don't like the status quo to be shook up. The pharmaceutical industry is going to do whatever they can to not lose profits. The food companies are going to do whatever they can to not lose profits. Now, hopefully, what I'm hoping for is like we saw this during COVID again, right? It's like you can take a manufacturing plant that manufactures just about anything, and overnight they're making masks and ventilators, right? Like that. It's driven by market demand, right? So if enough people wake up, like right now, I don't think people realize this, but like Walmart is the biggest carrier of organic produce in the world.
Really?
Yes. So you think of Walmart as cheap or there's junk food there, but no, they're the biggest carrier of organic produce in the world, right? If you go to H-E-B right now, you're going to find grass-fed beef. You're going to find pasture-raised eggs. It's going to be there. It's in Kroger, it's in H-E-B, it's in Aldi. And then you have, Erewhon, Whole Foods, Treasure, whatever, right? It's all driven by demand. So I don't think that it's some big thing where like the big food companies are absolutely evil and they're trying to kill everybody. I think they're just trying to maximize profits, which is what a for-profit system does. And when you have a fiduciary responsibility, which means you have to make your shareholders more profits quarter after quarter, year after year, this is where you do have situations that seem evil on the face. Like one of the biggest funders of the American Dietetics Association No, the American Diabetes Association. I'm sorry. One of the biggest funders of the American Diabetes Association is Coca-Cola. Conflict of interest?
Yeah.
Yes. Good way to make profit? Yes. Right? Or then you have, like, when you get into scientific studies, there's a nonprofit organization that funds a ton of food studies and nutrition science. And it's called the ILSI, which is the International Life Sciences Institute, which sounds warm and fuzzy. And their statement is like, we're a nonprofit organization. We fund nutrition science for the betterment of humanity, right? ILSI is owned by nothing but big food companies. Pepsi, Red Bull, Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, all these companies, because they knew, well, if this study says funded by Red Bull, people are like, So now it says funded by the nonprofit, the International Life Sciences Institute. We're here to help you. You know, it's nonsense, dude. It's absolute nonsense, but it's all driven by profit. I don't think it's a big evil thing where they're just trying to kill everybody. It's just there is a perfect system set up where, like, toxic poison food disrupts people's metabolism, leads to chronic health conditions. They then go to a doctor who has all these prescription pharmaceuticals and surgeries and all these things that they can do that are just trillions of dollars a year to treat these illnesses that are caused by the foods they're eating. It seems like a big evil system that's just trying to kill everybody, you know? But it's actually just, I mean, I'm very pro-capitalism, but these kinds of things can happen with capitalism because it's a massive way to just drive profits year after year after year after year.
Yeah. I think there are a ton of very good and well-intentioned people doing bad things
Totally.
in the health system, you know? It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Do you have any strong takes on just the current state of the health in the U.S.? Anything that stands out to you or you feel like you want to see change happen the quickest?
Yeah. I mean, we said this a little bit in the beginning, but I think that health and wellness journey for an individual is a personal development journey. It has to be, right? You can't stop at calories, man.
Yeah.
You have to wake up and you have to be able to just, again, do critical thinking where you're like, okay, mainstream advice has been calories in, calories out, eat less, move more since the 1950s. 90% of adults have clinical metabolic dysfunction. If you include overweight, obese, and what's called morbidly obese, right? Those three categories, 75% of the population fits into that category. 75%, 45% of children are obese. When you look around, you can't just think that humans as a whole are so stupid and so lazy that they are just willingly killing themselves over and over. No. They are in marketing funnels that are giving them bad information, that are gaslighting them when things go wrong, that are telling them that it's only their fault, nobody else's fault. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
It's a personal development journey. You have to understand, hey, listen, I have to take extreme ownership. It's like you said, right? Like I went carnivore for a full year. When I first learned about the ketogenic diet, I stayed in nutritional ketosis by daily blood draw for 12 weeks and did 2 hours of fasted cardio every day. You know, it's like I figure these things out. What works for me? I have to figure out what works for me. And again, this is where we get to the like I said, it almost sounds hypocritical because I'm like, well, if you're homeschooling 8 kids and or you're working 60 hours a week in a job or something like that, like it's going to be hard for you to try to do carnivore or keto or whatever. Yes, but you do have to get to a place where you're willing to take ownership for your own health and wellness, which is why in all of my programs, I break it down incredibly simply, right? For anyone listening right now, again, go to Instagram, DM me. I will send you a food list. This is my food list. It has over 110 foods on it. And I can break down your health and wellness as simple as if you only eat foods on this list and do not eat anything that is not on this list. And now, again, this doesn't include macros, how many calories, nothing. This is it. This is the one thing. Only eat these foods. Give it 6 months. Give it 3 months. Give it 30 days. And see how your life changes. But you have to do it. No one's going to make the choice for you, right? It's like you have to make a choice. You have to take ownership. You're the only one who can hold yourself accountable and just see what happens.
Yeah.
That's it. But it's a personal development journey to get yourself to a place where you can see what happens.
Dude, I love the reframe of just personal development. It actually ties into something that you said that I thought was just a great point about the content that you're starting to produce now. You're like, I want to turn pro.
Yeah.
And I feel like at a certain point, that ownership level of anything that you're doing, especially your health, it's like just it needs to be baked into like your entire demeanor. Like this is just a part of who you are, and how you're approaching it is you're constantly raising the standard. You want to be a pro at being healthy, even though it's kind of a weird way to frame it. It's the truth. It's like, what would a healthy person do? It's like, get more sleep. Okay. Get sunlight. Okay. Not poison yourself with garbage food. It's like, that's an incredible starting point.
I love the way you frame that. There's there's an amazing book called Stories from Your Future Self, but there's an exercise that I work through with clients where it's like, you're at starting point A, like you're at point A right now. And 3 years from now, envision your healthiest self, right? The best version of you. Who do you want to be 3 years from now? Nobody looks out 3 years and says, well, I have diabetes. I've gained an extra 100 pounds. I'm tired all the time, right? It's like, no, they're going to say like, I feel amazing. My type 2 diabetes is gone, right? And I'm 100 pounds lighter and I work a job that I love and I this, that, right? So I have them just kind of really sit in meditation and envision that. And then we're all intelligent enough to do this, man. Just reverse engineer. If you're picturing that version of yourself, so let's call that B. We're at point A today. This is point B 3 years later. Think about what that version of you does on a daily basis. What does their day look like? What does their food look like? What kind of conversations are they having with, say, their romantic partner over coffee in the morning? Where do they go to work? Where do they live? What do their friendships look like? Because if right now you have a bunch of asshole friends that talk shit about each other behind each other's backs, do you want that 3 years from now or do you want something different? And use your imagination here. And don't feel bad that 3 years from now you may have left some toxic people behind. Like, really envision the best version of yourself. And whatever they're doing every day, start it today. That becomes your daily habits. Simple daily habits. In Clovis, I call them daily non-negotiables. You're going to tell me what you want. You're going to tell me where you're at. And we're going to set daily non-negotiables that are more aligned with what you want. And then like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar, you bend space and time. And you become that version of yourself.
Yeah.
And you're putting it 3 years out. Watch. If you start to do the daily things that the 3 year later version of you is doing, you might find that you have that 3 year life a year from now. It happens much, much faster than you think if you can find consistency, which is why it's a personal development journey, because the consistency is the hardest part for people.
Yeah. Where do you think most people slip up in approaching that framework, or where have you seen most people slip up?
100%, it's a lack of self-love. And it's hard to say because it's the hardest part of the journey. And it was the hardest part for me.
What does that look like? Lack of self-love? Like, how does that kind of show up in people's lives?
An example I use is, let's say somebody comes to me and they're drinking, 10 Pepsis a day, right? I'm like, okay, you're drinking 10 Pepsis a day. We're going to have to stop that. If you really want to be healthy, we're going to have to stop that. And the person's like, oh, son of a bitch, here's another nutritional therapist telling me that I can't have my favorite drink and this, blah, blah, blah. It like feels like this like scarcity, restriction, sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. If I can help them get to a place where they're reframing it and they say, I love myself so much, I would never knowingly poison my body, which is where I live. But it took me years to get there. I was drunk 6 nights a week as a musician. I know what it's like to poison your body. I've been there. This wasn't always easy for me. I used to eat a ton of bread and pasta and pizza. Pizza's maybe my favorite food of all time, and I used to eat a ton of it. I had to go through this experience myself as well. So if I'm at, a Thanksgiving table with a bunch of family and everybody's eating a bunch of stuff that I'm not eating, I'm not looking around like, oh man, I wish I could eat the pie. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I'm making a choice. Either I made a pie for myself that has ingredients that I'm willing to eat, or it has to be a self-love practice. So people get confused when they first come to me in my programs. The first thing I have them do is stand in a mirror and say, I love you to yourself 10 times. Like, what? I thought I was here to lose weight. You are. Trust me. Trust me. But you have to love yourself enough to think that you deserve the best, man. To think that you deserve the best. The quality of life that I want does not include a 99-cent bag of Doritos. I'm not doing it. I'm not putting that in my system. I am a luxury vehicle that runs on the highest octane fuel available, and I want that for myself. I want to feel amazing every day. It's a journey of self-love. That's it.
Dude, that is so good. That is such a mic drop. Unfortunately, I think we've run out of time, but I seriously think I could talk to you all day, and we're going to have to do a part 2 because
I would love to.
There's so much gold here, and I just love your framework around health and wellness. I think it's absolutely the direction that the world needs to move into, like our world needs to move into. Love the humility that you bring to the space. So just appreciative of what you're doing. And I'm really excited to be here and watch what happens the next year, 2 years, 3 years of you putting in the work. It's going to be sweet.
Right back at you, man. This has been amazing. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Dude, thank you.